Okay, so welcome. So we're here for our third Q&A call, and these are just always a time for us to deepen together, whether it's asking specific questions, practical questions, logical questions, like really helping your mind to just settle in, and also a place to share or get extra support that you may need that's kind of different than the sister council calls, where the sister council calls are more space to just like kind of let it go and be witnessed and perhaps to receive reflection. But this is more if you want to share and get feedback or insight about specific flower essences, or maybe just about a process that you're in right now, then, please make sure to use this time. So we got Natalia eating. So Rachel, you can eat. And yeah, just totally, I always feel like I was just on a call the other day that I was a participant in, and I was like, can I eat? Is that disrespectful? Is that, so please, pretend you're just at your best friend's home and do whatever you need. Okay, so let's start by closing our eyes and just bringing all of our energy here. So in your own individual self, really inviting all of you to arrive, all of you that you're aware of to arrive. So any pieces that you're connected to that are fragmented or that are distracted, you really want to pull them into this space and time right now. Because as we gather together and as we share, there's really important morsels from everyone sharing that are impactful. And so when all of you is here, all of you can receive the subtleties, the nuances for revelation, for inspiration, for remembrance. And as you arrive, paying attention to all the sounds around you. That might be nature sounds like birds or ducks, or a bee buzzing by. That may be the sound of children around you. That may be the sound of your neighbors or a city. Pay attention to the resonance of those sounds. Are they uplifting? Are they high? Are they full of challenge or struggle? And just without judgment, just taking in what surrounds you. And noticing your body. Tracking everything. Feeling all of your sisters here, those who are here live, those who will be listening to the recording. Feeling one to the left of you and to the right of you, across the circle from you. And just like you might in person, if you can bring this into your mind's eye, really meeting and greeting women with love and respect, appreciation and gratitude. And it's here together as a sisterhood that we give thanks to Gaia for her endless, limitless supply of nourishment, generosity, of sacred medicines. Really feeling in the profundity of receiving from all of nature. Saying hi to all the elementals, all the benevolent beings, the angels, the archangels, your guardians, your allies, your teachers, all of these beings weaving in the unseen realms who are part of nature's epic, epic magnificence. That you get to experience and partner with and relate to. And so we give thanks for all of this and so much more. And we ask that this time together is in deep service to us as humans, as women, as practitioners, and that this ripples out to all beings everywhere. And so it is. So it is. And so just taking a moment when you're ready, you can slowly come back. So I'm going to try something to start our group off today. I'm going to see if it works. So just take a moment. I'm going to stop my video for a sec. Okay, so we are going to have to come back to that because I couldn't figure out how to do it. Well, we'll see if we can circle back to it later on in the call. So for now, I'd love to just start with some questions, shares, what you're present to, and we'll just kind of weave around the circle. So when you complete, the next woman can begin and maybe just, acknowledge the woman who spoke and go from there. And, I would just invite you all, as always, to bring vulnerability and maybe even go deeper than you want or think you can in an online space, because it's really where the gold resides. And then we get to be part of the alchemical process. So we're going to start with Michal because she's got to leave the call early, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, thank you so much. First, I want to say that I have just seen the module 9 and 10, and I want to thank, and I have so much respect to all the sisters that have shared on these calls their hearts. It was so, just thank you to everyone on these calls. I honor you. So I have 3 questions. I don't know if that's too much. So I'll put them all out. And so one is, are there essences or kind of essences that you wouldn't offer to children? Like releasing essences, or I don't know. Second is, what is your answer to people, like when I say what I do about the flower essences, a lot of people say, oh, like Bach, like you do Bach flower essences. So what is your answer to that? And the third is much more of a personal sharing and a question.
Okay, let's hold on that then, Michal. Let me answer the first 2, if that's okay, so I don't forget. So the first question is great. It's actually got me like thinking. Okay, so as far as like essences that might not be okay for children, I can't think of any, because I actually have used milk thistle, which is one that we would consider like releasing. I had mentioned about my nephew like having lots of anger at some point. He was little. I feel like I want to say he was 4, 5, 6. He wasn't like 10 or 12, so we gave him milk thistle. So you can use them. I would just say with kids, because they're so much more open energetically and they haven't had as long of a time to create armor and have the depth of imprints from trauma, that it's like almost better to start more slowly. I mean, I kind of say that with everything, but to start with some protection essences, or to start with to just kind of see what happens, but I wouldn't say that there's ones like the shamanic ones, maybe I wouldn't use for a child, because they're already, I mean, especially your son's age, I know what age he is. It's like he's already in those liminal realms. I wouldn't say the shamanic ones would be necessary. But it just leads me to want to say this one thing, is that, and I know I spoke about it the other day, I think for children, there's also a way that we can use essences that like just kind of amplifies their natural essence. Like it doesn't even always have to be, use this essence for this issue. It's like, how can we amplify what's already alive inside of them as who they are, which is, kind of a different frame of looking at like, what's the problem and how can we fix it? It's like children have that resilient kind of potency within them, and depending on the age, if they're younger, they're still really connected to divine realms, and so I'd say that I just saw your message. Okay. Oh, hold on one second. Where would it be?
Right in the bottom breakout rooms.
No.
Okay, so you'll probably need to log out. Come back in.
Okay, thanks. So there is this capacity of like, how can we just like amplify what's already there?
And by amplifying that, like the wound, or what in my eyes needs to be released or healed will just naturally be healed?
Well, I think it just depends on the circumstance, right? So like, I'm going to give you some like what if, like just different circumstances. So let's say you have a child who is feeling like they are going to school and for some reason they're having fear arise as they go to school. So there's two different ways we can approach it. You know, we can approach it where we're giving essences for creating ease and working on whatever that fear might be. But then what if there's like a natural tendency in this child to, like, you know, your child, right? So you're just like, wow, my child's actually, let me think of how I would say this. Like, well, I'll take my son because it's easier than like a total random thing I'm creating. So my son, within his personality, like he loves to be with people. It's very highly, it's actually like an important part of who he is. He really likes to relate to people. So let's say he was going to school and he was, you know, nervous or scared and having fears. So I could focus on the fears, but I could also kind of like tend to and amplify the places where he feels really relaxed and really can relate well with people. And so it's almost like there's two different ways that you can come in to help a child, and both of them are going to be great. But with younger kids, because they don't have the emotional baggage, there is something about just kind of strengthening and amplifying what's already real and true for them, because they're just going to move into it pretty easily. Does that make sense? Yeah. I mean, you can do this for grown-ups too. It's just because kids respond so quickly. It's like, it makes it easier. Like, for example, when I was talking about with kids yesterday, like show them the pictures of the flowers and get them involved in that way. It's like you can give children really fun practices to do that are like fun and silly, and those things are going to make everything move much more quickly. Okay, so there's that question. The second question was, see, I've already forgotten.
What do you answer when people say, oh yeah, you do the Bach medicine?
Yeah. So actually, this is our module for next week. I'm going to be sharing lots of different ways that you can speak to that question. So if you don't mind waiting till next week, because it's like we're going to spend a lot of time on that. I think because we can get really confused about what to say, and we want it to be expressed really well so that it lands for people, and not that they either make an assumption like, oh, you're doing Bach, or their eyes kind of glaze over because they're like, I don't need flower essence, like checked out, just like gone. You can't even get to them. So I want to spend a good amount of time on that piece. So that you feel confident when somebody asks. And there's many different ways over the years that I've kind of learned what to say depending on who I'm speaking to. Okay, now for your personal piece.
Oh my God, I was hoping it wouldn't come. No, I really want to share this, but it's so vulnerable. Okay. So I have this.
Wait, Michal, so let's take a deep breath.
Oh no.
And just everyone here who's getting to witness, take a deep breath. So we receive you. It takes a lot to share in this way, and so we really, really welcome what you have to bring forward.
Okay. So it's about this triangle of like my dad, ex-husband, and my son. And it's so interesting. It's happening like, you know, with the Priestesses of the Rose, like with this Yeshua temple. And so I have this thing which is happening more and more. I see when I am in full attention, like in sessions, and with my son, being in my son, I get like these violent bombs inside of me. It's like I would hold space for a client or be very attentive to my son, and suddenly like I can't hold it. Like it would be like the energy would be like crushed by this like surge of like violence or like a picture of something. And just to clear the space, like it's not an entity issue. And the more I am clearing stuff out of my system, the more this comes very, like, it's very present. And today my ex-husband, like my son had this thing in the kindergarten, and with like his, you know, the woman who takes care of them. And I asked my ex-husband to talk with him about it because he was at his place. And I didn't want to wait about that. And then he called me saying that he talked like, because he said stuff to some of the kids that like she shouldn't have, and I wanted him to tell him that no one should be upset with him about this kind of stuff, so he would know that he was okay in this situation. And so they've talked about it, and they have started to getting more into speaking about violence. And then my son told him, my son is 2.5 years old, and my son told him that I hit him. I hit him like on the cheek. And like the way that my husband described it was very dramatic. Like, who's hitting you? Mom, what did you do? And my ex-husband, who is, he is who he is, like immediately like shut me up and like said, I don't believe anything you're gonna say about it. I believe him, and I'm just gonna, and he was like threatening me like that he's going to keep his eyes open from now on. And there was a whole conversation about it. Well, not conversation, yelling process. And it ended up like with him saying he's like, after 2 hours like of, you know, texting each other, and it ended up with him saying that he's sorry and he should have checked it with me like before blaming me. And but you know, I was obviously left with it and like trying to understand why I was so triggered about it, because I could have just said like, I'm not gonna convince you, you know, you can think whatever you want to think and fuck it. And I saw how how instead of like in my relationship with my father, instead of like receiving his attention, like I could see how his frequency was very violent and very aggressive. Like he never hit, you know, there is a whole different story with my father, but like there was never like physical violence in that sense. And I could see how this is what I've learned, and being with my son, how hard it is for me like to just be clearly attentive with him, and how like what my system does with him is like just vibrating this violence. Like that's what I learned to do in relationships or in intimate relationships. So that's what I do with him. and it was amazing to me that he is so sensitive to have been feeling this vibration and translating it into "Mom hit me." And it's not that it's happening all the time, but well, so this is the sharing, and and my question is, what essences are good for, putting aside the trauma and like the stuff around it, like is there essences for just clearing this vibration from the field, like, and just not just me, like if you come, client who's been suffering from like physical violence, like is there essence just for like this frequency of aggression to clear it?
Thank you, Michal, for sharing all of that. So I know you have your question, but I have some questions. So if you don't mind me asking some of those, because they'll help with the answer that I think you're seeking. I just want to understand this piece a little bit more. When you're in those moments with your son, have you been able to track when that aggressive violence in your being activates? Like, is there, he's not listening, you're tired, you haven't eaten, you maybe haven't seen each other for a couple days. Like, have you been able to track, or is it just kind of there?
So actually it happens a lot in moments of not doing something, like just reading a book, or when he sleeps in my bed. So when he's asleep and I just go into bed, like just being at his presence and not doing an action, it will just like a trauma shock, it will suddenly it feels very much in my third eye a lot of the times, like it would just come out of nowhere to my, yeah.
Okay, and so have you been able to track, like, why, what, where, besides your father, besides it just being, maybe part of lineage?
No.
Okay, and so then when you're with him, like when you're like making dinner or you're taking a walk, or like it's not there, it's in like the quiet moments.
Yeah, and also comes to mind like what happens to me when I'm like in very deep, long session with someone, like healing session, when all I'm doing is focusing in holding the field and transmitting. It's like a feeling of, I can't hold this light to the fullest and something is crushing it. Like I don't have a belief that I can hold the light and everything just be full of light, and because like there is something wrong, or like like there's a spot, like with OCD people when they need everything to be clean because they see the spot. So it's kind of a bit of this feeling, like it can't be just good and relaxed and full of love. Something needs to crash it.
Yeah. I'm almost wondering if below that is some fear. You might need
Yeah.
to track it in the moment, but actually what I'm feeling, like something just clicked for me when you were talking about, because I've heard you talk about this before. I think yeah. But when you were just talking about when you're in a healing session with somebody, I had this feeling of like, when we go into these very like highly spiritual realms where our capacity expands, our ego starts to decrease. Like we're really in these other realms. when we get too far out, there can be a lot of fear that arises, like, am I going to leave? Is this light going to overtake? Is it like, and it's not really conscious. It's usually from another life. It's usually, yeah.
Yeah, when you've just said it, I felt in my body exposed. Like doing that just makes me feel so exposed. And I think like the taking the vibration down is like taking me back into my body in
Yeah,
a
yeah,
sense. And that's what happens to me with him as well. Like there's a fear of being exposed in this love and in this intimacy with him, and I can't hold it.
yeah. Yeah, and also mothering in and of itself will bring us out of those really cosmic spiritual places, because it's like it's so of the earthly plane to take care of somebody. So like as far as your question goes, it's tricky because I'm trying to understand all the layers, right? It's like you're saying, is there an essence for like kind of releasing these energetics? But with flower essences, it's like, where, like, and you know, sometimes we don't always know. It's a journey, but it's like, why is this here? There's some protective mechanism, you know, because it's like when that violence come out, that's eros. That's like that life force pulse of the red ray, that I'm speaking to you about it just because I know that you can connect with this language. So that as we incarnate that red ray that we come in with, there are these violent aspects to it that come forth through the distortion or traumas of the life force energy that pulses through our own bodies. It's what we see in the world. It's like, you know, all the distortion of the warrior and power over is just like, it's all violent. It's not really in service to love. So it's almost, it feels like there's like some feels like some like inside of you, like a computer board or something. It's like this switch needs to get turned off and this switch needs to get turned on. And that red ray that ultimately when you cultivate it becomes the ruby ray, super clarified, that you can hold love, that you are love, that your capacity and ability for loving just is expansive, it's infinite, has to be worked with a little bit more. And so like the essences that are coming to me are all red, but it's not specifically like, okay, we need to work with this violence. It's like the violence is the trigger of something else.
Yeah, and I know exactly what it is.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I don't want to take like all this so much space of the call, but it just completely connected with when you said the red ray of the arrows. And
Okay,
like,
well, you have to tell a little bit so I can tell you some flower essences.
okay. So during the I think second formula. Oh yeah, during the module about sexual healing, like deep memory arose within me, and it completely changed everything.
Mm.
Like, yeah, that is concerning my father and this issue.
And so like boundaries being crossed by your father to you sexually.
Yeah. So although like there wasn't violence about it, I didn't connect it to this whole thing. But as soon as you said it, it made sense that that's like the source of distortion with it.
Yeah. Yeah, so when's your next session with Joe?
In 2 weeks.
Yeah, you may want to reach out to her sooner. I'm picturing some red flowered essences. You know, and obviously something within the masculine realms, because it's like it's happening, like you said, this triangle, right? Which we're working with deeply right now in Priestesses of the Rose. And Yeshua. Do you have the Yeshua essence? I forget.
Yeah, you've sent
Oh, I
it to me.
sent it
You've
to you.
magically sent it to me.
Right, right. So you may want to, like, especially at night when you have that feeling when you're getting into bed, you may want to just take a drop of the Yeshua essence and just kind of sit with that violent feeling and just see what can be offered through the masculine lens. And then I feel like there's some red flower. So I can connect with Joe too after you connect with Joe, and just see how this continues on. Because it's just, we're going to get to a deeper place if we do all that than just saying, like, what's the essence for shifting this energetic? It's like there's a reason that that energetic's there, that your father carried it, that it's in you right now, and of course, to hopefully be the last person in your lineage to carry it, right? And to have a child reflect that so powerfully because he's so sensitive and he can feel it and he goes, oh, she's being violent. It's like, of course that brings tears. And of course we want to see how and where you can shift that.
Okay, thank you deeply, and thank you everyone for allowing this space and holding it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Michal. Thank you.
Thank you, Michal, for that vulnerable and courageous share. That was beautiful, and I just wish you love and light as you work through that. That's very difficult, so thank you. So it feels a little awkward to transition from such vulnerability to a logistics question, but I actually have two questions. So the first is, I think the first client practice call is tomorrow, and I'm on that. And I am a little bit behind on some of the modules. So I was just wondering if you could point me to where I could find a little bit more information about that. If you've mentioned it on a call, I can go look at a particular one. Just want to make sure I'm ready for tomorrow.
Sure. It's really nice to see you here again.
Thank you.
So my goodness, I'm not looking in the portal, but wherever we started talking about like coaching questions, does anyone have the portal open? Ulasita, do you? Let's see. Let me see if I can go to it quickly.
Sorry.
I can open it if you need me
Oh yeah,
to.
if you can open it, love, because and then just, if we can just tell her the modules that we started going through, some coaching counseling questions that yesterday in the module, the continued module 10, there were like some final coaching questions that you can look at, but Ulisito, maybe you could just put it in the chat box when you find it. And those are the ones, and you can print them out if you want for those practicum calls, so you feel like you've got something, or just look through them before you come.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then my second question, and I apologize if you covered this on that call, but just more of a kind of vulnerable share, some things I'm feeling as I'm thinking about possibly pursuing becoming a flower essence practitioner. I hadn't originally come into this with that desire. I mostly just wanted to kind of strengthen my connection with the earth and learn about this medicine. But as I'm considering it, it just feels really intimidating. I've also in the past thought of pursuing, a degree in traditional therapy and in psychotherapy, and doing something like that is years and years of training and practice. And so there's a part of me that just feels, how could I possibly be ready to counsel people and help them seek flower essences to help them work through such difficult and vulnerable and big things in their life. So I don't know exactly what the question is. It's just something that I'm struggling with, and wondered if anyone had any thoughts, maybe Amaya, you or Ulasita, people who kind of practice this. How do you sort of feel more prepared? How do you overcome this feeling of, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't have enough training, I don't know enough?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and it's, I think it's a question that comes up for many, many women, especially as we near the completion of the program, going, okay, I want to do this, and like, do I know enough? Am I good enough? All those questions. So you are ready. You're all ready. You all will be ready by the end of our program. You have all of the tools that you do need to be a flower essence practitioner. And I say that really from a deep sense of trust in this program and what we've put together, that like kind of all builds on each other. And when you start anything new, you're not great at it. Like, you're not going to be, I remember when I first met my flower essence teacher and I heard him talk, I remember leaving the workshop, I was 24. I remember going, oh, I wish I would just sit on my bedroom floor for hours trying to create formulas, hours and hours and hours. And I remember having moments of like, oh, I just wish I could download his brain. Just wish I could download his brain, and like I'd show up and I would know what I was doing. And the beauty of not being able to do that is that you really learn in an embodied way and an experiential way how to be a practitioner. So you're not going to like have this first session where you're like, I'm the best practitioner. You're going to go, oh, I could have asked that question different, or I forgot to ask that question, or, oh, I really want to follow this path. And the beauty of working with people in a slow way and over time is that you actually do have the time and space to follow up in all of these different ways. And every time you don't do it, quote unquote, perfect, you learn something. You go, oh, that's really a question that I want to bring up in the beginning, or I really want to create this space like this so somebody feels really relaxed. It's such a learning process, and it's so important. And in our world of social media and the internet, people bypass the learning experience, and they're just like, come to my masterclass, come to my practitioner program, and they've been a practitioner for a year. So I'm not taking away from the experience that's held within that year, but there's a little bit of our culture where we just go, I just want to be the best right now. And that's a beautiful thing to orient and to create a goal for. But the learning of it is like, it's so profound. I'm still learning 20 years later. I'm still going, oh, that would have been a great question to ask. And so it's a practice. Doctors practice, like literally, I'm a practicing doctor, right? Nurses practice. It's like, that's the word we use It's practicing to get better and better. And you will see, you'll be like amazed at how much you learn in 3 months of being a practitioner. Like every time you work with somebody, you learn something. So, it's really up to each person here that when you have these thoughts and feelings of insecurities, which will arise as you start anything new, that you choose to work with them. Because if you don't, then you just allow those beliefs to keep you from what it is that you want. What I have found over the years is that, my clients have been my greatest teachers. They've taught me everything that I know that I'm sharing with you all. And I think that if you start working as a practitioner, you're like, I kind of want a little bit more of shamanic training, or I kind of want a little bit more of counseling training, or I kind of want a little bit more of, it's like that's how you weave together your sacred gifts because of what you feel like. Maybe you want to learn specifically more about trauma and somatic trauma. And I guess I would just, to answer your question, I think it would be really great for you, Ulisita, to also share, is my prayer is that, well, I have a couple prayers, but around this, but, one of my prayers is that whatever service we wish to provide, so being a practitioner, we allow ourselves to be in the discomfort or the truth that we feel insecure or we don't feel confident, but we don't let it get us. And the reason that we have these 3 sessions for you in this program is so that you learn what it is like to hold space. And what that means is that you're 1 or 2 steps ahead of your client because you've already had these sessions, and hopefully many of you will continue to work with your mentor way beyond this program, because there's way more that we can all be uncovering and unpacking in our own selves. And so even if you're 2 steps ahead of someone, you can help them, you can lead them, you can serve them. And the perfectionistic tendencies that we have, they don't really serve us. We're not going to be perfect in anything we do. We all mess up. We all misspeak. We all withhold. There's something that happens to each of us all the time. Your connection to nature, your curiosity to a client, that's the mixture for magic.
Thank you. That was beautiful. I really appreciate that.
Welcome.
I'll share a little, and I feel like I'm reiterating so much of what Amaya just said in a different way. And for me, it really has been, what my prayer every day is, may all those whom would be served by my offerings find me in divine timing. And magically that prayer works, and I tend to attract the people into my life that I can really serve from an embodied place. So all of the work that I've done on myself over the past couple of decades seems to get really translated into the work that I do with others. And so much of my own story and my own trauma healing, I see in those who come to work with me. And so it's like from the navigation of my own self-work and my own healing and making this about me rather than about others, I now am able to serve others from that grounded and embodied place. And you know, I definitely feel like I had a pattern when I was first starting to get into this work. Like, I just wanted to learn all the stuff so that I could be the best, whatever it is that I was wanting to be, you know? And that process has really evolved over the years to trusting in my own experience to be my guide, to be my compass. And that's been huge. And I've noticed in my work, I still can be pretty heady and pretty intellectual. And I love knowledge and I love learning. And I've noticed that my own approach to working with others has really also evolved over the years, in that, you know, in the beginning, I felt like it was more of, because I've been a teacher, I've been teaching yoga and spiritual philosophies for years before I was doing flower essence therapy. I found myself showing up in a way in which to teach. It was like, let me teach you about these different things. And even though I think that's an important, you know, that there's important pieces to be shared whenever you're working with another to help your clients learn about these new ideas and principles. It's like, now I notice, it's like, okay, let's close our eyes. Let's close our eyes. Where are you feeling that? So I noticed myself making it more of a somatic experience in working with the body as I'm offering my work now. So anyways, I share that just because it's always going to be evolving. Your work is always going to be evolving. It's cyclical. It's not finite. It's not linear. And so much of our programming in a Western culture, especially whenever it comes to getting a certification and then making that your career or something you're doing for money, it's like, you do point A, point B, point C, and then you're done and you've got it. And as Amaya was talking about doctors and nurses, they are still practitioners. They're still practicing. So rather than it being this finite thing of, and now I do this, it's like, it's just always getting to evolve as you evolve. So resting in the gnosis and the knowingness that it's cyclical and it's always going to be evolving. And that, especially being in the healing profession, you don't have to be healed to help others find healing. That is also a cyclical process that will always be on as long as we're in our human bodies. So I feel like that's about everything I have to share, but it's this beautiful, and I think in this realm of the flower essences, it is such a juicy, watery, feminine, earth-held profession in a lot of ways, that when we get to like really rest into that experience of the feminine being birthed forth in the way in which we're also serving, a dismantling of an old program, you know, seems to kind of fizzle away as you get to be this new embodiment, this new incarnation of yourself. So yeah, thank you so much for hearing and receiving those words.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
And so Kira, Ulisita put the modules also in the chat for you. Thank you.
Hello. Hi. Hello, sisters. I really first honoring Kira and Ulisita and Amaya, all of you, for what you shared, for your, you know, deep and practical lights on this journey. I feel very blessed to take them in and to make them mine in my own way. And I don't really know what's happening, but I trust, as you were saying, Lucita and Amaya and Kira. So first, I want to share with all of you that I really missed you. I missed the last sister circle because I got the times mixed up, and I was so sad. I just wanted to share that I was really sad to, just not be able to enjoy that sacred circle. And it brought up a little bit of feeling left out from my whole life. But it was so healing to see how it was so different this time. I just felt like before I felt left out while being in circles because I was so different. I couldn't connect. I was just, I was an observer, and I was fine with it. I was, observing and just being in the energy of the unseen in the circle. And then I gradually chose to be very selective of what circles I joined. So I kind of left myself out of many circles because they weren't my circles. So now that I feel like, oh, this is my circle, it's so precious, and then I missed it. So it was kind of like a full wrap of my journey with feeling left out, and just wanted to share that on a sharing level. And then I have a few practical questions that I've been playing with. I guess first I want to share that I make my essences with sparkling water, and it's so blissful. Just wanted to say that I love that I trusted my yes on doing it that way. It feels very alive for my journey. And okay, so I guess I have 4 topics. They're not very long, but I guess I'll start with the, I guess 2 are connected. So physical symptoms and sprays. Those are like I'm very curious about them. I've had a lot of physical energy moving out through my being, through my skin, lots of fire. And I've been working with it, and it keeps changing, not getting like worse. It's just changing. So I've been, I'm sorry. Otra. So I've been using different sprays, and yesterday for the first time I added some essences to the spray, some rose hydrosol. So I added some essences that I felt could support me, like milk thistle and comfrey, horsetail, like some that I made here at my home that I use internally. Anyway, so I just was curious about your what you have to say about. That's the first one.
Thank you so much, Maria, for your shares and all the love that you feel for this circle, because I can feel your love for all of us, and every time you speak here and your sharings on Facebook, and I just really want to affirm and reflect that love that you carry. And I really appreciate you bringing forward that piece of feeling left out. I think that's such a common woman, young maiden thing to feel, and it's not always something that we speak. So thank you. So we have a level 2 training that's all about physical symptoms. And it's just using the essences in a slightly different way than what's taught in this program, which is more from like a counseling perspective. because as we know, healing isn't linear, and it's going to take us in all different sorts of directions. And generally, when we start working in the emotional realms, there's going to be physical things that flare up, that show themselves. They could be new things, or they could be things that you've journeyed with for some time that are being activated. And also, therefore, like if somebody comes to you having physical symptoms, you get to lead them into the emotionality of why those symptoms are there as well. So they really go together. I think it depends. As far as a spray, my first thing is like, just to really continue to trust yourself, because that's most important. And then the only other thing that I would say with that is that if you can figure out, like depending on how you're working with somebody, or if it's yourself, obviously that's different. But if you can figure out, or if you know why that specific emotion, physical symptom is manifesting, then a spray that can connect to the emotionality of that would be amazing and actually really helpful for people. I think a spray with an internal essence would be incredible as well. Or a spray, like you didn't mention exactly what your symptoms are, but a lot of times when we get heated or we have anger and upset coming through us, we could end up with rashes or hives, or just like issues that are inflamed, urinary tract infections, yeast infections. So if it's skin related, you can also either use that spray and apply it topically, or use an essence and apply it topically, just like how we do in herbal medicine. For those of you who know herbal medicines, like taking things internally and externally, right? It's like the both and. So, with a physical symptom that is absolutely linked to an emotion that you're working through, it's like the both, I think, would be great.
That's very helpful.
Great.
Like it really kind of makes my connection more clear with what to use in this specific case. Okay, so then my other questions, one is about making making a formula with glycerin for like I'm just thinking about children. I have 3 boys, and they're like in the oldest is 14, but they're all very particular about their flavors. So I made like a basic, rounding one with a magical tree we all love in our home, and it was very, very mellow. The flavor is very mellow, like there's so little alcohol, but still it's a lot for them. So I guess I came to just feeling, I'll just make a spray, because they're so open that they'll just take it in through the spray. So that was one of my choices. But then I wanted to ask the question about the glycerin, because I was just curious and just wanting to know, just more choices.
Yeah, so I have personally never used glycerin. It's just so thick that there's a part of me that wonders like how the essence and the glycerin work together. Like, what is that alchemy? So I think if you feel called to do it, like do it as an experiment. What is it? Like let's say you're really familiar with the essence of that tree in your backyard. You've taken it, with the brandy. Maybe make it with the glycerin and take it and see, are the effects the same? Can you not really feel it? Because that's always a great, your own self is a great gauge. And then I think we talked on one of our early calls about Lotus Way, the flower essence company, that they use honey. I don't know how much honey they use, but that seems like better to me than the glycerin almost. But part of this is just like experimenting.
That's also really very helpful. I will experiment and let you know, all of you. And then my last one is about like you mentioned before, like when someone is has a lot of anxiety, like to create an extra formula just for those moments that are like, those high anxiety panic moments. So I'm working, like I'm helping someone through, like navigating addiction. And so there's like a formula that's been moving very gentle and stabilizing, and it's moving a lot of layers in a gentle, grounded way. But then there's still those moments that is like the high anxiety that can take her down into the hole again, and does many times. So I just feel like I want to create another one for those moments. And I was just, I don't know, just wanted to hear from you, like what you had to say about that.
Yeah, I think it's so helpful. Anxiety, who here's had anxiety before? Yeah, so it's just like, it's pretty intense, it can be all consuming, it's super uncomfortable. And depending on the levels of anxiety and what they're connected to, it can cause a person to disconnect from themselves, from the process. And so to have a formula that they're getting to take as needed, that's so powerful. So they don't just have to like sit and like figure out how to get through it or find another vice that they use to check out of that. So, I think giving someone like 2 or 3 bottles, 2 is enough. And just, I always say, like, just take a lot, take it as much as you need to, because what people also like to do is, you give them an extra bottle and they're like, oh my gosh, it's really working, but I'm just going to keep saving it. I'm just going to save it for those like really intense moments. But actually we want people to be using them anytime, every time the anxiety arises, because what it's going to do is it's going to obviously decrease the anxiety in that moment, but over time it's going to lessen the overall anxiety. So, I have somebody, if I give an anxiety formula, or if a client emails me and is like, oh my gosh, I need support, they just take it as needed. So anytime they feel anxious, and especially if it's at the very beginning, they take a couple drops, they breathe. Okay, is the anxiety still there? Okay, it's still there. Usually it's still there, even after one. Okay, I'm going to take another 3 or 4 drops. I'm going to wait for a minute and breathe. Is the anxiety still there? Sometimes you have to take a third dosing of it. And then usually there's like a dissipation. And so the essences that I really love to put into anxiety formulas are red cedar. I feel safe. I'm safe. I'm safe. Borage, for not just courage, but for that blue channel to really be moving up the body. Red cedar, St. John's wort. I'm going to stay in my body. I'm here. I'm going to stay in my body. So borage, red cedar, St. John's wort. And you can also look on the Gaia's Wisdom website, because I can't remember it right now, when you go to shop and in the formulas, I made an anxiety formula. You can see what I put in it. But red cedar, borage, St. John's wort are really good ones. They're all just like, I'm safe, I'm protected, I'm staying in my body, I feel courage. If you ask somebody like, Maybe you'd want to put lavender in because maybe their body gets really agitated, or maybe you put lemon balm because their mind is just like, that's where the anxiety comes. They're just like thinking about every possible scenario that might happen. So you can also, depending on how the anxiety affects that specific person, you can customize it for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I love you all.
Love you so much.
I want to hug all of you. So I just sent you virtual hugs.
I know. I cannot wait to hug you all in person.
Maria, may I go next? Maria, thank you. That was so beautiful to feel your energy and just all your love. And you were so embraced in this circle. So grateful for you and all that I learned from you. Just very beautiful. So thank you. And Amaya, you may have, with just the way you addressed Maria, I may have my formula answer, but two things I just wanted to presence. One is, I have to tell you that 18 years ago when we built our home here in Colorado, we disturbed the land and got disturbed in a big way that I wasn't expecting. And what ended up happening at the time is a lot of the plants that were normally there shifted. And so I ended up with what I learned eventually was like thousands of mullein plants. And so at the time, not being so attuned to plant life, I removed them. I didn't remove all of them. I started removing them because they would get 6 feet tall, and it was just like this forest of mullein. And so I tell you that because I've gotten so tickled, because I realized then about 5 years ago when I became aware, just much more aware of the flowers and the plants. I've always been aware of the trees, but not really paying attention to all the other plants. I just heard to myself, the mullein is trying to talk to you. So anyway, I've been waiting for the right time to make a mullein flower essence. And that occurred yesterday because a mullein, actually I created this little garden, and we have mullein on our land, and it's around, not in the thousands, but it's absolutely very present. And so I have this little garden, and a mullein plant has grown into a massive mullein tree in my little garden. I'm like, okay, this plant wants to attune with me. Like, this is the one, because I needed to choose. And so yesterday I was making the essence. I had this beautiful experience, and every single time I've made an essence, I sit with it, and it's a beautiful morning, and I'm sitting out there. And so then I leave, and every time I've done an essence, it rains. So whatever is going on with my flower essences, rainwater is really important because it keeps raining. But so I just wanted to presence my mullein plant and have expressed my gratitude for it being such a beautiful teacher for me. And I'm beginning to work with it very consciously now that I've got the essence completed. But I wanted to just, and I think you answered the question on the essences. When my 17-year-old son was born, I had, with my son's natural births, and with him, I planned the same thing. He was my third son. And the doctor ended up not being there that I would normally have. And so I ended up with another one, and she ended up insisting that the water be broken early. And I didn't like that. I really kind of gave her a lot of grief about that, and I just was not strong enough. I had the strep test, and had shown that I had strep during the pregnancy. She's like, Melinda, you have to do this. You can't go any longer. And I'm like, I'm thinking, are you sure you have dinner plans tonight or something that you want to go early? But that was my skepticism at the moment, because it really irritated me that I felt like I didn't have a real choice in that matter. So anyway, the water is broken and the process begins. And like I said, I didn't do any medicine or any drugs to do anything, but he ended up coming and had pulmonary hypertension when he was born. He was blue, and my husband noticed his feet were kind of blue, and I wondered if we had just left him alone a bit if he would have just like re-regulated that. So he ended up for 10 days in ICU, and he was perfectly fine. And they used nitrous oxide, which doesn't have any side effects. It's like, you know, divers who get the bends. So he, for his first few months of life, he would always take deep breaths. And I was always observing him, and he's perfectly fine. He's very strong. But anyway, then about, I don't know, when he was about 5, we were driving through a canyon, and we were listening to the Dalai Lama. And on the last turn, the switchbacks in my canyon, on the last turn, this Mack truck was coming up with these massive logs. And as we're going through the turn, the logs break loose, and one of the logs flies into my car. You know, it's like a big tree, and it actually hits the bar between the driver and the passenger seat right there. And my glass shatters, and he was perfectly fine. And he says to me, Mom, you know, I think we were saved because we're listening to the Dalai Lama. And I'll never forget that moment, because we were perfect. We were perfect. Everything was perfect. And he was fine. And so this past year we were hiking, and he brings up his birth, and he brings up that incident, and he says to me, and he's a very scientific, logical kind of guy. Like, we got in discussions on flower essence, like, Mom, that stuff's not real. You know, show me the evidence. Okay, Thomas, look at, what about energy? What about wavelengths? We're talking about vibrational energy. You study physics, you know this. So we're constantly like going back and forth on science behind different things, because he's a very logical kid with the way he looks at it. But he actually is quite magical. And he said to me, you know, I find it interesting that I've had 2 near-death experiences. And I said, well, I find it interesting that you're Superman, because you have been amazing with both of these experiences that you've had in your life, that you've been perfect, you know, that everything's been fine. But I thought I was really kind of, it made me aware that that was in his consciousness, that he looked at it that way, because I had never looked at it that way. But it was something that he was looking at. I don't think that at this point in his life I could persuade him to take a flower essence. But I wondered if I gave him a massage, and I don't know, I mean, I could be a little stealthy. Get some red cedar, borage, and I'm sure I have to get his permission. Anyway, I just wanted to presence to that and see if you had any comments.
Well, I love everything you just brought up. I really want to honor that mullen that's been so patient with you and so present for 18 years, you know, just, you know, talking about resiliency, like just that, the resilience of that mullen to get your attention. And I look forward to hearing how that, your relationship with that plant continues to support you. It just made me smile so much. And yeah, I think, I mean, I have my own commentary of like the doctor and the birth and like that kind of stuff that I don't really need to get into, but, you know, I think it's just such a powerful, I mean, the couple things that I'm thinking of is like, it's a powerful affirmation that what happens in our life is part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's just like, that is, he's had these experiences, whether he remembers, you know, his birth or it's just in his body and he's heard the story, right? Sounds like he really remembers that moment with the log and the car and the Dalai Lama speaking. And I think it's a powerful reminder for us that everything that happens does impact our lives in some way, how we relate, how we think about our life, right? That he has this, whoa, I've survived these 2 experiences, like, and then how we then interpret that, like what's true then for him about his life or about himself, because there's some belief that gets created from those experiences. And And it seems like for the most part, it's something really powerful for him. It's not a deficit to who he is, that he had those things or that he's been vulnerable to those things. It's the frame is more like, whoa, I am magic, or I have survived this, or whatever. And one of my son's teachers last year, we were at this open house night, and another parent was kind of processing some things that was going on with her son, and it was kind of like sexually oriented and curiosities of sexuality as a child. And she said, you just, as a parent, when they get to a certain age, like, you can't really do much, right? They're their own beings. You can't force them to do, but you can kind of like leave things lying around the house so that maybe one day they pick things up, right? So like for me, my son's so little, it's like, oh, I'm just leaving like a Where Do Babies Come From book around the house, and he picks it up and he's looking at different bodies, and he's, and you can do that till they're 15, 16 and becoming more sexual, like, whoa, this is, and the conversations that naturally occur. So like, I don't know, maybe leaving out some flower essence books, or, some pictures of flowers, or, oh, I left that flower essence out. But yeah, you can try it if you want, with like no attachment, it's there. And I'm sure in a way he's used to it because of all the things that you're interested in. And usually there's a moment where kids, no matter what their age, young adults, there's a curiosity, or like even inviting him out to sit with you one day while you're with the Mullen. Like, no attachment to him being part of the essence making, but just, it's a beautiful day, let's go sit outside. And, it's an interesting question, that the piece you just, or like inquiry, the piece you just came up with of like, like you can't force him, right? Or you said something like, if I don't have his permission, or something like that. And there's like a yes and with that. There's like, absolutely, we want to be working with people who are autonomous in their choice. And, he's 17, you're his mama, like there's still some things that maybe for the next 15, 20 years, you might be saying, I really want you to do this. This is really going to help you. And it may be that if he's not interested in taking an essence and can't quite go there right now because his mind doesn't believe that, and I totally understand. I'm curious, like, would he like a spray that he thinks is just like essential oils? It's a beautiful smelling, but it's got some flower essences in there as well. So that's my share.
Thank you, Amaya. No, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. I mean, I think you're right. I love the idea of the invitation.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the stealthy invitation as well.
Yeah, like you're not like getting into whole conversations about flower essences, just like leaving some little morsels around. And, kids, depending on the kid, but I'd say generally, when you get to a certain age as a youth, young adult, like you don't really want things self-imposed on you. That's the power of being a revolutionary in that timeline of your life. And so without imposing, just like you said, the invitation.
The invitation, yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So lovely.
Yeah, thank you.
May I speak next?
Hello. Oh.
That's okay.
Oh.
Okay. I'll go after you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Melinda. Thank you, Amaya. And actually, Melinda, I can relate to what you were saying about your son, because my eldest is 11 and she absolutely will not take an essence internally, but she really likes sprays. Like she was really scared in her bed one night, and I said, oh, I can spray some flower essences around your bed for protection, and she really, really liked that. And I even dropped like a protection essence in the wooden frame around her bed, and she really liked that, but she will not take it internally. So yeah, I can sort of say sprays. Kids, I think, are more open to sprays than internal stuff. Yeah. So I've got a few questions. So my first is, it's a bit of a worry that if we were working with someone and something big and deep comes up, maybe something that they haven't thought about for a long time, maybe even something they'd forgotten, and say you've got an hour's session with them, I have some fears around them kind of being re-traumatized. And you know, at the end of the session, yes, I will, you know, post them an essence if it's an online session, but that's going to take time to get to them. So yeah, I just have fears and worries that like all this huge stuff will come up for them, and then it's the end of the session, and then they've got to go about their daily lives. And so I'm not sure what my question is, but it's just a worry that that might happen and how you might navigate that.
I think that's a beautiful wondering. Yes, like we don't want to create more trauma. We don't want to rush anyone, right? So, you know, kind of, I just actually thought of like a logistical piece as you were talking of, well, let me ask you something. Do you, when you think about this, or the people that you've already worked with, do you see them in person? Is it on the phone? In this vision you have, what does the scene look like? Are you in person or not?
No, I was kind of thinking more online, and so they won't necessarily have an essence to sort of have there and then for immediately afterwards. It would take at least a couple of days, you know.
Right. So, so one of the logistical, I was picturing more in person, so I'm just, I'll shift it around a little bit. You know, there's a certain plan that we have of like, okay, I'm going to be on the phone with somebody for an hour. And then there's things like this that arise that we're like, I can't get off after an hour. Like, that's just not going to work. So I think even when you like look at your schedule, you may want to like put a little buffer, 30 or 40 minutes on there, whether you have somebody where this happens or you just have some space between another client, or even just your own self giving space before you reroute to like parenting and home life. So it may be nice to just give yourself a buffer so that you don't ever feel like you're going to have to be rushed. And you know, there's something so hard for those of us who are care providers and caregivers and overgivers that, you know, we don't want anyone to be in discomfort. That's uncomfortable for us. There's also something really powerful about something arising for someone and then them having to sit and be with it. That's really actually important for being an agent of their own self, which when there's been trauma, there's a separation from that full agency of self. So, you know, you always want to be mindful as a practitioner of like, okay, am I giving just the space that's needed, or am I just so uncomfortable that I'm trying to show up more for them? Because people are going to be uncomfortable. Like, it's not only going to just be that something arises, it's like that maybe they've forgotten. It's going to be feeling some deep wound. Like, it's this process isn't comfortable, right? So we all know that, those of you who have been, working with your practitioner and like having stuff come up, it's like, it's nowhere near comfortable. But you have a commitment and a devotion to keep showing up and going on to the next and to the next. And so, thinking about the fact that they may not get their essences for a couple days or however long, you can also, what is that availability that you want to provide to somebody? Do you want to check in with them tomorrow? I've had many times where I'm like, hey, let's talk first thing tomorrow morning, or send me a text for the next 3 days, so that I'm with that person and I have an understanding that what's just revealed is a big deal. So those are some things that I've done, and I think just be ready for that to happen. And then depending on what it is, that's when your list of referrals and resources will be really helpful. So maybe a lot just came up and you say, you know what, I really recommend you go get a massage tomorrow. Just like really help you land in your body, like that there's other resources besides just you, and also knowing that you're leading them in a journey of their own personal maturity and responsibility.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting that piece around, like, someone's paying me money and they're paying me money because they want help, and yeah, it's fears that I guess it's my not wanting people to be uncomfortable, even though ultimately it's their journey and they'll learn and they'll grow and it will help them. But it's like, oh God, I've had a flower essence session and now all this stuff's come up and it's not comfortable. And so it's me kind of feeling okay about that. And yeah, it's really interesting.
It's big for all of us. Like, what's our edge? What's our own edges of other people's discomfort? It's really hard, to, even with friends, right? It's like, I have a friend going through some really big stuff right now, and I would love to just like take it away from her. And I can't, and it wouldn't serve her. And so, it's really important for you to get clear on what your role as a practitioner is. And really even saying, in that first session, it may be saying, hey, there's going to be moments that are really uncomfortable. And that's part of it. And the essences will help, absolutely. And there may be parts where like you don't want to do this, or you're in pain, or, just saying it up front also really helps. Even saying your discomfort, sometimes I can be really uncomfortable when my clients are in pain. And I also know that I'm here and it's your journey. I think presencing what's real for you without making it about you. But I think putting it forward, kind of sometimes just saying it just alleviates it a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's, just giving me things to feel into and to think about. So thank you. And a quick question on a more practical level. I wondered if you're able to, so if you're making up a bottle and you've got your water and your brandy and your essences, I wonder if in advance you could just make up a load of bottles that are just the water and the brandy, that are just ready to go, and then you know that they're ready to go, and all you need to do is add the essence.
Yes, 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 yes.
Because sometimes I feel into, oh good, because I think, oh, I could just do that quickly, but then it's like, oh, the brandy, the water, it's not in the same place. And I just thought, God, if I had all those made up, then I could just drop the essences in. Oh good,
Yes.
thank you. That's helpful.
I remember the first time I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, I just spend like, 1 or 2 hours making, and then it's just there. It's so much easier. So yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
May I go next?
Yes.
Thank you. I actually have a really quick share before my question that I think, I don't know, Maya, this for me, for the flower essences is something that I started doing when you travel. It's a little bit hard because I travel with my water, with the, if you're going somewhere. So what I realized is these waters that some companies make, and maybe Maya, you can add it to your line at one point, the water, you can carry the water here, and where they put the crystals, when you want to create an essence, if you're traveling, you could create the essence and leave the flower essence in there so you could travel back home. And I figured this actually, when I go to the creek, I'm sorry, did I just lose everybody?
Nope, we're here.
Okay, you can hear me, but I can't see you, so apologize. So whenever I go to the creek and I find that I want to make something, I put it in here. So just wanted to share that if you guys want to look into that, but I would love to see it actually like with your logo. I think that would be awesome. So,
I'm hiring you, Denise. You're the next one on my list to bring into our team.
It's an honor. It's a beautiful feeling. So thank you. So my first question, and then I have a quick share if I may. My first question has to do actually with my daughter. So I had, when you have those moments, I've had a lot. So thank you for being an amazing teacher and your guidance. So during one of the flower essences class, I realized I have a 12-year-old who has had kind of attachment issues or detachment issues, like where like we sent her to camp and she called us crying, like FaceTime, that she's the quietest child, never complains. She's been sick with pneumonia when she was a baby. We didn't even know. She's been that very quiet, keeps everything to herself. So I realized when she was born, and it was during one of the flower essence classes, that when I had her, I did have an epidural. And I guess immediately after, I ended up getting a really high fever. And so all I remember from that pregnancy was that I really don't remember much other than, I don't know if they just literally showed me her and they took her right away. They like, I just remember the doctor and the nurses like basically kicked everybody out of the room, told my husband he had to leave. And I kept asking for her and they were like, you can't see her. And so and even now my body just, feels that like pain and just like suffering that she must have felt when they took her from me and me being away from her. And so, we've had that where she has issues like being away from us. She doesn't like camp. We tried it a second time and we kind of made her stay that second time. And she was really upset at us, and she's 12 now. We have a great relationship. I try to spend a lot of time with her. She's very open to a lot of these things. I do yoga with her and we work out every morning. So we have a close relationship, but I realized, I worry for when she goes to college, if there's essences that maybe I can introduce to her for that.
Yeah, so red cedar is kind of like, it's one of the best ones for that piece of like children who like have a hard time going to school or going to camp. It's like, it's so, so helpful. But just like with all the other things that you said, like what's coming to me is the arnica for moving trauma and Mariposa lily for feeling connected to you in a really healthy and whole way. And there are imprints that get created at that moment of birth and before birth. And you know, obviously she's probably not aware of them to speak that, right? Like, where was my mom? And all of a sudden I was, you know, away from you. And that feeling, you know, babies are, it's not cognitive, it's somatic, right? So I'm not safe. And so those are the three that are just coming to me. Of course, any protection essences will be helpful as well. But, you know, for both of you to be taking Mariposa Lily, especially because just some of the shares from the other day about your mom, and you didn't quite get into it, but, you know, I think those three essences would be amazing.
Thank you. It's funny because I'm taking Mariposa Lily on the second 30 days.
Of course
and
you are.
Arnica, yes.
I've taught my practitioners well.
And red cedar. So you hit it on the nail right there, you know.
Great. Yeah, so
so
she could use, you could just give her red cedar and Mariposa Lily, but I think that Arnica would be really important for her too.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you. And I think the nice thing is I've been able, thanks to my journey, you know, have more connection with her. Like when she had her first, you know, moon cycle, just literally a few months ago, is actually very emotional, which she's not. And so to be able to connect at that level with her has been really amazing. So, so thank you for that. So I just have a quick share about, you know, again, more of the magic that I feel that the flower essences have brought to my life, my heart, my soul, and Joe, you know, being my practitioner, my, you know, again, I call her my flame keeper, my light. And so on this last session, you know, it was funny that we actually discussed at the end, like, what are some of, you know, the things that I wanted to work on. And one of them is somehow is at one point, it's like, I have refute my power. I have not accepted my power, which what power that is, I have no idea. And so, not to get into, you know, my whole life story, but I've been that businesswoman, and, you know, I own my own company. I've owned it for probably about 12 years. I've been a financial planner for 20 plus years. And I know I do my job very well. And during that whole time, you know, I've had to deal with that financial side of my brain, the non-emotional side, the one that doesn't tap into their heart, the one that has to be the bitch, you know, the idea of putting a label to what it was that I thought I was, has been pretty harsh, I think, because, you know, now moving forward, and I've shared a little bit on the Facebook page, and like a lot of my, I guess, like emotional pain has manifested on my body physically. And again, I've had every test in the world, because at one point I thought I was literally dying, and I have had a shamanic death. And so anyways, I thought it was very interesting. And I have to share that right before this class. I always like to be like in Zen, and, you know, like I enjoy these circles, and, you know, and I want to say that it's amazing, you know. And so for that reason, you know, to be able to share is really great. And I have to take a step back, and I don't think you know, I apologize, Laura. I should have honored, you know, your position. And I knew what I was going to say. And that was that, you know, thank you for your kind heart and your soul to be so concerned for your clients, and the clients you don't have yet, and the clients to come. So it's like, almost like I was speaking to you through my mind. So I apologize, but I do honor and want to provide space for that. So I want to say, you know, your kind heart is loved very dearly. So I apologize for that. But my share really quick is that I had a call with, I have to deal with a lot of crap when it comes to like my business. And so for a long time, I've been told by the corporate, you know, monsters probably, that I have to literally, excuse my French, eat shit in order to make money. And so deal with the crap of, you know, these like really mean, evil people. And so I did for a long time. And I realized today that that was one way that I refused my power, because I got a call from someone very, very powerful that can literally like slam the door on my business and say, no more business for you, Denise. And for the first time, I've always been told, you have to take it, just deal with it. And for the first time today, I said, no, I'm not going to, you know. And I obviously, I just had a very professional and just what I think was, you know, important conversation with that person. and ask them why it is that you think this, but at the end of the day, I deserve respect. I mean, to the point where, you know, years ago, about 5 years ago, you know, they spread a rumor that I was having an affair with someone, and it was just horrible. And I realized today, it's like, it's all these women that, instead of, you know, women supporting women and empowering other women, it's like they're trying to basically take me down. And I, for a long time, accepted that. I, for a long time, did not speak my truth. And it can really jeopardize my business, that side. But I remember having the call with you, Maya, and telling you, I don't think I want to be a practitioner. And now it's like, I say, yes, this is my calling. This is what, and I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my soul that this is my calling. And it's not about money anymore. It's about what my soul had forgotten for so long and yearns so deeply. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, wow. Wow. What a celebration on many levels. Thank you so much. Thank you. Look forward to your first client and your second client and your third client, and you going, oh, I think I actually can make money from this. Oh, this can be a viable profession too.
I'm scared. I'm not, you know, everything, every single one of you, like beautiful sisters, has said resonates in my heart. And I'm obviously afraid because I have built a very successful business. And I'm not saying that, you know, like I tell my husband, doesn't mean from one day to the next, this is what I'm doing. But now, like being here with you, I feel light. I feel so much like calm and peace that like penetrates my body and my soul that I haven't felt in who knows how long. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I mean, that just feels like a perfect place for us to complete for today. That's just like, that's why we're all here. And that's, yeah, I feel grateful for your share and grateful for your allowance of that revelation.
Can I have a quick share to that?
Sure.
I just, when she was speaking, it sounds so similar to what I'm going through, like her big business and then stepping into the flower essence. For me, it has to do with her being so strong in her masculine energy and now allowing her feminine energy to come in, and it's equally as strong. So that's what it felt like to me. And that's what I'm going through. It's like all of a sudden I just feel like I have this like sword of goddess feminine energy that I've never had. So I just wanted to share that because I'm like on fire all of a sudden.
I'm dripping sweat. I'm like,
woo,
my shirt is soaked.
Yeah. So anyway, I just kind of celebrate in her energy and feel similar. And it's like maybe something that we're all transforming as a sisterhood. But for me, I'm just not playing small anymore. I'm just ready to be I'm ready to be me. It's not anything else, just be me fully. And by the way, I did get the job with the Panthers. So I wanted y'all to know that. And thank you for the support. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. I'm sure that feels really good. You said yes and no to certain people, and the universe responds. Everything responds. When we're resonant in our truth, things change. And the way we get resonant with our truth is to learn our truth, which is what the flower essences do. So, yeah, that's just amazing. And I just, feel like as so much, especially in the United States, but of course it ripples out to many, many places across the globe, here with so much power over structures dismantling themselves. It's like that, of course, it's going to happen in our own selves, right? It's like any power over, any power suppression, we get to dismantle it in our own self because we don't really want to look like the people outside that we've been conditioned to believe is like the end all be all. So thank you all so much for this call. I feel juiced up and fired up and sweaty and so good. It feels like I just like did a workout or something, or went into a sauna. And so for those of you who are coming to the practicum tomorrow, we will send you the call-in details in the morning, tomorrow morning. So just make sure it won't be like a newsletter email like you usually get, just will be from Mariana with just the call-in details. And once you get there, we'll share everything that's going to happen. And yeah, I wish we were all together and like just total in the celebration and enjoying all that's here, all that's in process, and all that's to come. So thank you all. I was actually just going to have us all close our eyes and complete, but I feel like just the beauty of looking at each other feels really nice right now, and just yeah, seeing what's present in each other's fields and faces. And thanks for putting your face on, Seta. And thank you all so much. Thank you, Ulasita, for sharing, and see you next week or tomorrow. And take really good care of yourselves as you're evolving and changing. Thank you all so much. Blessed be.